Danny Dyer's built his career basically playing a cockney working class geezer, and he's used this platform to openly come out and criticise Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer's representation of the average working man. The Labour Party historically has always been a party for the working man, whereas the Tories were more representative of the elite classes. But in a recent interview with The Big Issue, Danny has expressed his somewhat vulgar and somewhat profane criticism of Sir Keir Starmer and the way he is leading the country and the fact he is letting down the working classes, and in particular young people from working class backgrounds. Danny Dyer said, "I don't trust Keir Starmer. Why Angela Rayner's not leading things, I don't know." Actor Danny Dyer calls out Keir Starmer and calls for more working class politicians in an exclusive new Big Issue interview. "I certainly think there is an awful lot of scope for more working class representation amongst politicians. Whether the politicians themselves will be of working class backgrounds, and historically that's not really been the case in most instances. But certainly it feels now more than ever that maybe politicians should be standing up and doing more to represent the working classes. We've seen these new proposed changes to employment law, which Keir Starmer says is there to protect employees. However, there are quite clearly obvious issues with these particular proposals, which are going to harm both some sectors of employees, but also those of an entrepreneurial spirit who are running small to medium-sized businesses. It feels more than ever that the working class person who actually goes out, works hard, pays their taxes and supports their own families are forgotten about, being taxed more and more to the hilt in order to both fund the lifestyles of the elite ruling classes, but also those who come over illegally in boats and have to be put up in hotels, and a small subsect of society who simply choose not to work but instead to play the system to ensure they live a life that is funded entirely by the government, and by government read the taxpayer." Danny Dyer has called for better working class representation in politics in an interview with The Big Issue. Dyer said he was ready for a change of government but was so far unimpressed with Keir Starmer. Now, Danny Dyer has historically been a big spokesperson for the Labour Party, so actually this is quite a landmark thing, if you care what Mr Dyer has to say, that he's come out now and spoken openly and critically about our leader. "The Tories are such fucking arseholes that Keir Starmer got in not for what Labour was saying, but because the Tories it up so much," Dyer said. The fact that Keir Starmer is now Prime Minister wasn't because of his own policies, his own manifesto, and the fact that he appealed to the British public. It's because 10 years of Tory leadership have led this country down the garden path and put us in the situation that we are currently in. A situation, dare I say, that with many of the big issues, Keir Starmer is doing absolutely nothing to rectify or to get us out of. "And I don't like this man. I don't trust this man," said Danny Dyer. "He got the job handed to him on a plate, as we just said. He didn't earn the position. He didn't earn the backing of the British public. All he did was take advantage of just how unpopular the Tories had become with their 10 years of failed leadership. So what are you going to do to show us you're different?" And he's gone straight in on the pensioners. I find that fucking fascinating. That was my best attempt at a Danny Dyer accent there. And it's true. If you're talking about representing the working classes, if you want to ingratiate yourself with the working classes and the working man, then one of the worst possible things you can do is go straight after those people who have worked their entire lives to pay into the system and then take away one of the allowances that was given to them to help them survive in the coldest winter months. Sorry to interrupt the video very, very quickly. If you're not already subscribed, please just hit that subscribe button. It's completely free. There'll be no hard feelings if you change your mind at a later date. At the moment, only 5% of people who watch my videos regularly are actually subscribed. So let's change that around a little bit. Hit that button and it'd be greatly appreciated. It helps me more than you know. There'll also be a link in the description down there if you want to buy us a beer. But for now, back to the video. This is meant to be a working class party. We need more working class people in politics. Why Angela Rayner's not leading things, I don't know. When she speaks, I listen. I am not necessarily a big fan of Angela Rayner. However, I do feel that in some capacity she would be doing a better job of representing the party and presenting the party to the public in a way that the public are more likely to listen. Since Keir Starmer took over, he has done nothing to ingratiate himself with the British public, instead riling them up, criticising them for their legitimate concerns, sectioning a large number of people out as far-right thugs just because of their legitimate concerns and beliefs, taking away the pensioners' winter fuel allowance, promising an increase in taxes for those people who work for a living, and doing absolutely nothing to stem the number of people coming to this country illegally and legally at the cost of the British taxpayer. It then goes on to talk about how Danny Dyer spent the morning trying to sell The Big Issue and his experiences around that. And I'll link the article in the description below because it's actually reasonably interesting. Now, I'm not a big fan of Danny Dyer, although I did like The Football Factory. I thought it was a good film. I think it's important when someone who appeals to a certain demographic comes out and speaks their mind in a very blunt way. And it just goes to show, as someone who was a lifelong supporter of Labour, Mr Dyer, and literally voiced his disdain for the lack of support for the working classes. Danny also talked about the plight of young people here in this country, talking about the expectations they have and how their lives are liable to pan out given the current state of the country. What career do you take as a young person, he said. You can work your bollocks off, but you're never going to get on the property ladder. If you still can't get a roof over your head, what are we trying to strive for? We are not on the planet for long. The formula was that you got a job, raise enough money, maybe meet someone, get on the property ladder, have kids, and pay for that house to leave a legacy. I can see why young people aren't inspired. And I echo so many of those sentiments. It must be difficult today for kids to not know what is expected of them. And there are many reasons for this. The fact that we now have to have 2 incomes to support a household. And I could make an hour-long video talking about the reasons why that has happened. However, it's true. Young people do not have a clear path. Their expectations of life are blurred, dare I say, by social media and by aspirational content. And when they don't achieve the lifestyle that is shown to them, which is only ever achieved by a very, very tiny percentage of the population, they believe they're a failure. Going out and simply getting a job and working hard and striving to provide for yourself and ultimately in the long term for your family isn't seen as good enough. We are told that we should all expect better. We are told that going out and getting a job isn't enough. It needs to be a better job. It needs to be a higher paying job. We can't just have a car and a house. We have to have a big house and we have to have a fast car. Young people are drip-fed aspiration from the very first time they are connected to the internet or the very first time they get a phone. And we are told that enough isn't enough, which leads to a lack of aspiration, and that alongside a cost of living crisis and the fact that, as Danny points out, it is so hard to get on the property ladder, leads to an awful lot of young people feeling disillusioned and out of touch with what is expected of them. The whole country needs to be inspired, he said. We need a fucking leader. We haven't had a leader in a very, very long time. The last supposed leader was David Cameron, and when the shit hit the fan, he left. That was after the Brexit vote. The referendum that David Cameron actually allowed to happen, purely, I believe, on the basis that he thought the result was going to go one way, but the silent majority of Britain spoke up, and the result went the way that he didn't expect. And he wasn't able to do that, and he wasn't able to deliver Brexit, so he stepped down, rather than taking the bull by the horns and using this opportunity for change as a way to lead to a better Britain. Instead, he cut and he run. That's not what leaders do, Danny Dyer said. Since him, we've had nobody, and we haven't. We've had a succession of Prime Ministers, often with a very quick turnaround time. Nobody who's really acted like a true leader. So it's a worrying time. We did need change, but I don't feel anything's changed as of yet. And that concludes his criticism and quite blunt, but fairly frank criticism of Keir Starmer. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, stay safe and stay sane.